Judging by your comments, I'm clearly the second most popular presenter on this channel, with my good friend Mr. Head here winning himself a legion of fans. I guess I'm just not as hip. Richard, or Dick to his friends, is a skeleton I bought off Amazon and performed some experimental surgery on. He's fine. But have you ever wondered how medical students learn bone anatomy in the first place? If you picture a stereotypical medical school classroom in a TV show or a movie doctor's office, you're invariably going to see a full-size Dick standing upright in the corner. But where do those skeletons come from? Is buying a real human skeleton even legal? Nowadays, most are synthetic, but the mass-produced ones, like Dick here, are no substitute for the real thing. They don't have all the tiny details that are so important to learn from, and any of the variations that we see in normal people, because they're all made from a single cast. For hundreds of years, doctors have depended on real human bones to learn from. You've probably heard the gruesome tales of grave robbing in the 19th century in Great Britain. Medical school's insatiable hunger for fresh corpses to dissect led to the deceased being disturbed mere hours after consignment to the earth, or in some infamous cases, nefarious entrepreneurs deciding that waiting for a natural death simply took too long. But those horrific days are long behind us, right? Well, in present-day India, history is repeating itself. As the modern medical era was ushered in, British surgeons led the charge to base their treatments on real anatomy instead of the centuries of guesswork that had preceded them. But to do this, they needed a regular supply of corpses, giving rise to the resurrectionists, as grave robbers were known. But in 1832, the Anatomy Act was passed in the UK, effectively ending this trade. However, by then, the East India Company's presence in India had grown considerably, and soon a fresh business model was set up. In India, processing and disposal of dead bodies was regarded as a low-caste job, left to some of the poorest members of the community. The promise of some extra cash was a no-brainer, quite literally if a skull had been requested, and soon India, where dead bodies were in no short supply, was the source of most of the specimens coming to the UK, America and Europe. And at the centre of this supply chain was the eastern city of Kolkata, or as it was then known, Calcutta. Obviously, corpses would never survive a trip to England, so instead Indian suppliers became experts in processing skeletons. They developed a reputation for producing high-quality, fully articulated, complete skeletons, bleached to a brilliant white. Buyers didn't ask where the skeletons came from, nor did the vendors say. One company, Reknas, a reverse spelling of its founder Shankar Sen, was the largest exporter of human goods anywhere in the world and became a well-known brand with affluent descendants today. Medics, at least here in the UK, will be familiar with the name Adam Hui as the makers of just about every anatomical model found in hospitals across the country. But they started by selling real human teaching specimens. Their website documents their close link to Reknas. I find it quite remarkable that between the 1930s and 1990s, British medical students, especially right here in London where Adam Hui was based, learned their anatomy almost exclusively from the bones of Bengalis that had seen better days. And they continue to be used. Maybe even I learned my anatomy from one of my ancestors. This roaring trade continued at a pace. In 1984, India exported 60,000 skulls to America alone. Calcutta's bone factory's revenue exceeded $1 million. The ravenous hunger for bones meant that simply scouring city mortuaries for unclaimed bodies would not meet the demand, just as 150 years prior in England. The bone merchants of Calcutta headed to the cemeteries and funeral pyres, ready to pounce as soon as the grieving family had departed. But everything changed in 1985, when a dealer was caught exporting 1,500 child skeletons of unknown provenance. To have this many young skeletons, more expensive due to their rarity, in a country where children go missing often, was highly suspicious. There was a public outcry, and the export of human remains was rapidly banned, despite protestations from American and European medical schools. In subsequent years, buyers, now predominantly in the USA, turned to China and the Soviet Union, but they simply didn't have the expertise, and the specimen's preparation was regarded as inferior. Slowly but surely, the trade returned to India. only now it was under the dissection table and behind closed doors. I'd like to be clear about one thing. While India became the world leader in exporting skeletons, it certainly does not stand alone in the dark practices of body snatching. I'll put some links in the description about what I consider far more macabre scandals in the US, where body parts were removed, sometimes without consent, for use in bone grafts which were put into other people without adequate checks, and the bodies returned to their families with PVC pipes in place of leg bones. The UK was rocked by an awful scandal when 850 babies had their organs removed without consent between 1988 to 1995. Many human bones are now illegally sourced from African countries. Unlike India, China does not have a free press, so we hear far less about what's going on there, but a litany of stories suggest a state-sponsored program of organ harvesting from prisoners. This illegal trade in human body parts was exposed in Scott Carney's horrifying and brilliant book, The Red Market, where each chapter is about a different human organ or tissue bought and sold as a commodity all over the world. While the illegal trade in kidneys and similar solid organs has become a common trope in Bollywood films, I had never really given any thought to where the bones that we learned from at medical school came from. I guess I just assumed that they were local people who had donated their bodies to medicine, but the processing itself is a long and messy and complicated affair that simply isn't done in the West. Scott investigated the trade about 12 years ago, including visiting a shop in Calcutta called Young Brothers, who, like Reknas, had been in the business for many decades. But unlike Reknas, they appear to have weathered the export ban and continue to trade, indeed, as the main source of human material in India today. So, after the excitement of Calcutta's biggest festival in October of 2019 had wrapped up and I had a spare day, I donned my new investigative journalist cap and off I went. Scott describes Young Brothers in his book.
Tucked away on a side street between one of Calcutta's largest graveyards and its busiest hospitals, Young Brothers' headquarters looks more like an abandoned warehouse than a leading distributor of human skeletons. The rusted front gate appears to have been padlocked and forgotten a decade ago. Above the entrance, the company's sign is a tableau of peeling paint. But it wasn't always this way. The building was bustling with activity in 2001, according to the Calcutta Health Department chief. At the time, neighbors complained that the Young Brothers' offices stank of death. Huge piles of bones lay drying on the roof. In 2001, when the police refused to file a case against Young Brothers, Khan raided the building with a posse of bamboo-wielding heavies. There were 2 rooms full of skeletons, Khan told me. It took 5 trucks to haul them away. He also seized thousands of documents, including invoices to companies all around the world. They were sending shipments to Thailand, Brazil, Europe, and the United States, he says. 16 years after the export ban, it was as if the law had never taken effect.
12 years later, the headquarters had become even more anonymous. When Scott talked to the owner, Vinesh Aron, back in 2007, he said that the company no longer sells human bones, merely plastic models. Their website does indeed boast quite an incredible range of models, but there clearly is a section offering the sale of real human bones. Being new to this investigative journalism game, I hadn't really thought my plan through until I found myself knocking on the door. A huge dog and security guard opened it a crack, and I decided, instead of trying to speak any Bengali as I'd never pass as a local, I'd use my ethnically ambiguous face and pose as Dr. Francis, a British lecturer interested in making a purchase for my medical school, none of which is untrue. The guard inspected me suspiciously, craned his head out of the door, looked around, and when satisfied that I was alone, physically yanked me inside. I was led into an unassuming, hot and desperately cluttered office. There was nothing at all to suggest what business operated from within except a few desiccated metacarpals or hand bones that sat atop a pile of papers. A middle-aged lady in a sari sat by a computer so old it probably remembered the pre-1985 company heyday. A very friendly man greeted me and we talked for about half an hour. Well, I've just left Young Brothers shop, which is right next to the complete chaos that is Calcutta Medical College, which is not only one of the biggest medical schools but busiest hospitals in the city. There's no coincidence that Young Brothers is so close. I had a long chat with the guy inside the shop. I say shop, but it was really just somebody's house. It wasn't even marked from the outside. I had to ask a few market vendors whether I was in the right place. I mean, ideally it would be just a full skeleton.
Articulated or
Articulated, yeah. So that, I mean, can you give me an idea of the price? So,
yes, probably Indian rupee, this is 6 lakhs.
they said an articulated complete human skeleton is 6 lakhs, which is about £6,000, which is a lot more than I was expecting actually. I'm not entirely sure sort of with the law and everything. It's legal to obtain.
It's legal. We are supplying this in India.
Yeah.
With the legal.
Fine.
Yeah.
And for me to take to UK, would I face any problem, or do you know? Do you supply to the
We
UK?
have the legal stock.
Yeah.
In India, we have the legal stock, and we are supplying this to the medical colleges in India.
In India, yeah.
In India, all the government order copies with us. There is no problem for that in India.
They said that whilst everything they do in India is legal, if I want to take some specimens back to England, then that's on me and that's my problem, and I suppose that's fair enough. I asked if they have other clients based in the UK, and they said they weren't able to divulge that information. The specimens themselves, is it a link with the medical college? Is that, there's nothing I can see today, no specimen here that...
Not today.
No. A couple of catalogues that I was allowed to look through, which were all of synthetic models. The range is bewildering. They said the cheaper, lower quality stuff comes from China. Our dialogue becomes almost inaudible at this point, unfortunately. I asked, are they unclaimed bodies, or are they donated with consent? To which he said, yes. So I tried to clarify. So you're saying that these are all unclaimed bodies, and he confirmed that there are many unclaimed bodies in Calcutta. Now, I don't know if that's true. Statistics are very hard to come by. But compared to the 1990s, when I saw way more people sleeping on the streets in Calcutta, I would be surprised if there are that many dead bodies with nobody to speak for them, raising the possibility that bodies are being sourced from elsewhere. So I just came out and asked if they have ever obtained bodies from graveyards, which he denied.
Okay, the thing you have come to the right place. It can be done. It can be done.
I don't know if giving your actual contact details is one of the golden rules of investigative journalism that you're not supposed to breach, but I'm a bit clueless at this, I guess. I know that one of the rules you're definitely not supposed to break is to forget to put a memory card in your camera, and sure enough, that's what I did, which is why this is all on my phone. So I guess I'll stick to doctoring from now on. I asked after Vinesh Aron, the owner that had reluctantly spoken to Scott years ago. I was told that he was upstairs, but currently extremely unwell and asleep, so I couldn't quiz him directly on whether he had any skeletons in the closet. The man I spoke to said that he would discuss my order with the boss when he's awake and get back to me. He never did. When researching this video, I spoke to current Indian medical students and graduates. Skeletons are still easily purchasable for far less than I was quoted, and there remains a general policy of don't ask, don't tell. Even medical students in places like Stanford said their professor had told them that the bones they use for teaching were sourced from India pre-1985. Chatting to people directly in Calcutta, there is certainly no suggestion that anybody's being killed, which was strongly suspected decades ago, but the understaffed and underfunded police in India turn a blind eye to what they probably consider a minor crime. The victims are dead after all. And this is just a purely personal observation here, but in Hindu and many other Eastern philosophies, human remains are not as taboo as they are in the West. It's believed the soul leaves the body at death and all that's left is an empty vessel. And so, 3 decades after the ban was imposed, Indian bone merchants continue to supply medical schools with specimens, certainly domestically, but possibly around the world. The workforce might now be a skeleton crew compared to the full-bodied glory days, but the trade in human bones continues. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times, and now, how abhorred in my imagination it is. What about you? Can you buy a real human skull, a Yorick, to your Hamlet? Well, in most countries, yes. The buying and owning of human remains remains legal in many countries, including the US, the UK, India, but not Australia. Now, there are plenty of vendors online, although I will tell you now, they're not cheap, or I would have even considered trying to buy something for this video. You'll have to contact them directly because eBay banned the sale of human remains in 2016. An alternative would be to raid a cemetery, although that would of course be a grave mistake because that is illegal. However, once bones are out of the ground, short of expensive DNA testing, there's very little way to prove or disprove whence they came. Talking of Indian skulls, some of you will have no doubt noted this picture behind me. This was a man from my village in India, from whom I learned yoga, meditation, and a strict code of non-violence, as well as how to kill people using my fists and fire. These 3 skulls were people in our village that died from a terrible plague, their bodies snatched from us by Shadaloo to be sold to British medical schools. That galvanized him, I think his name was Dave, to fight evil and made me want to become a doctor. Most Hindus and Buddhists are cremated, so relics, human remains like bones, are not common features, unlike in Christianity, for example. However, certain sects like the Aghori exist, who utilize skulls for ritualistic purposes, giving rise to the Indiana Jones character from whom Dalsim draws inspiration, Mola Ram, played by the late great Amrish Puri. And as you can see here, he was a cardiologist. $12. You couldn't get dick for $12 because he cost considerably more than that. And to be honest, he's taught me nothing. But for just $12, you can expand your mind. Now that you've heard about the Aghori who make cups from skulls, why not check out the Enigma Man on CuriosityStream? Have you ever heard of the Red Deer Cave people? I hadn't either. A skull cup found in China revealed an entirely new, sophisticated subspecies of human. CuriosityStream have thousands of high-quality documentaries on history, science, technology, and loads more. And not only have they supported me for lots of videos for a year now, they really have looked after me, but they're offering you a completely free subscription to Nebula, where I think you'll find something you will like. Nebula is the place where we can make the videos that we want to, without worrying about YouTube's algorithm owning us. And you can watch Nebula originals like Tom Scott's Money, featuring the sexy, the suave, the sophisticated, the supercilious, the Scottish, and the Sam. So to enjoy not only everything CuriosityStream has to offer, as well as access to all these educational creators' playground of new ideas, sign up at the link below and use the promo code MEDLIFE. Don't forget to use that code so I can get paid, motherfucker, to get a year for only $12, much less than you would pay for dick. Now, true fact, at medical school, after dissection, people used to feel really hungry. I don't know why, but it was very common. And all this talk of bones has got me rather peckish as well. Anybody for spare ribs?